now that the tensions and uncertainties surrounding the state's next two-year budget have been resolved. Governor Tim Walz joins me to take stock of his first legislative session as the governor of Minnesota. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Shannon, for having me.
When you campaigned, you had a grand vision for Minnesota. In the end, you had to give a few things up, but in general, how would you rate this first session?
Well, first of all, that grand vision was part of coming in on time. It was part of a legislative session that was productive, that involved compromise. When I talked about One Minnesota, I often gave the speech 100 times where I would say, it doesn't mean we all agree, but it means we work across lines of differences to move Minnesota forward. And so my goal from the beginning was clear. Education funding that moves us forward, preservation of the Healthcare Access Fund, the provider tax, and moving Minnesota forward on healthcare, and then making sure that our communities, especially out in greater Minnesota, had capacity to be able to thrive. That was local government aid, broadband, some of those things. So I'm certainly, I think this is what we came in envisioning. I know this is a down payment. A governor's job is to lay out that vision for Minnesota. I think we did that, a place where we can go together, a place where government functions in a way that brings folks together. You don't get everything you want, but we're basing it on what made Minnesota the state it is, and that was education and a healthy population. And so for that regards, I think pretty successful.
I think the idea of a down payment is an interesting way of looking at it. In comparison to other years, there have not been any gubernatorial vetoes this session. In addition, we will see new laws for hands-free driving, or hands-free technology for driving, increased fees on opioid manufacturers and distributors, licensing of pharmacy benefit managers to bring transparency to drug prices, licensing of assisted living facilities. In retrospect, that already is a pretty large agenda, and that's only part of it. How were you able to get so much across the finish line?
Yeah, and those issues are pretty bipartisan, and my goal is that to not have the drama come at the end, to not have the drama where we tear ourselves apart, and to start establishing relationships early. I've often talked about the compromise we made on the MNLARS, the driver's licensing system, was critical. Republicans were rightfully critical about that for years. I think Democrats were critical about it. It wasn't functioning correctly. It was a frustration for a Minnesota that prides itself on good functioning government. And we came in, put a critical eye on that. I made the case to Republicans to trust me that I would be able to bring some reforms there. They did, and we're seeing things move forward. So I think it was about building the trust. I think it was about working the front end so that we didn't get to the end. And I certainly understand the veto is a tool that the governor has. I think it should be used very sparingly, and I think if you do the work on the front end, you can avoid them.
You successfully negotiated keeping the healthcare provider tax, albeit at 1.8%. Critics who had pushed for the demise of this funding mechanism called it a slush fund. Will this money be managed more transparently in the future to, abet that criticism?
Yeah, during this, I think there was a lot of misinformation out there about the Healthcare Access Fund. Provides health care to literally 1 million Minnesotans. It certainly underpins our entire system. But I think some of the critiques were that, the original design, people didn't really understand what it was used for. Originally back, 27 years ago, there was some money that was sent to the University of Minnesota to work on preventative care. So those who said, well, that's an inappropriate use of the Healthcare Access Fund, it was an original use of it. But there were some shifts that have happened over the years that I think it's a fair criticism to say we can do a better job of telling people exactly where this is going to go. We removed permanently the sunset, which has been hanging over a lot of folks' head for the last 8 years. And we did come to a compromise to reduce it a little bit, which I think will force all of us to be more efficient with the dollars that we bring in, be transparent with them. So I don't shy away from that the Healthcare Access Fund is critically important. It is certainly not a sick tax, but the idea that there could be more transparency, sure. And I think those are things that I want to build into it because I think it builds more faith in the system.
Well, and another healthcare issue was the OneCare proposal that you had campaigned on. It didn't gain any traction this session, and instead the reinsurance program will continue. So essentially we're at a status quo.
Yeah.
What is next for affordable healthcare in Minnesota?
Well, we have to figure out something, and I made no, bones about it, that I thought reinsurance was a tourniquet at best, stopgap effort. Republicans were insistent that we continue it, and I don't think, again, I'm not going to be disingenuous. It did stabilize prices in the individual market to a certain degree, but it's super expensive. It doesn't do anything on preventative care. It doesn't bend the cost curve on healthcare in general, and it doesn't provide another option that OneCare did, where we were adding dental and vision and a better option. This was one of those fights that's going to be a little broader. It needs to, I think, take root a little more in Minnesota. It'll be something that I'll be back out talking about because, again, you're exactly right. I think describing this as a status quo is right. That's unacceptable because costs are continuing to go up. It's going to become more expensive, and this is going to be back in the same dilemma. I just, healthcare is not about sending hundreds of millions of dollars to insurance companies and lowering premium rates. Healthcare is about research on the front end, preventative care, making sure we're getting out there because when people say, well, we can't afford to do dental care, I talked to the hospital up in Fergus Falls. They had a woman with an abscessed tooth, couldn't get it fixed, ended up being a $100,000 bill, jeopardizing her entire health. We have to do better, and I'll go back out to Minnesota and make that case.
A task force will be established to look into the disproportionate incidences of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Also, for the first time in more than 30 years, there will be a funding increase for families who receive assistance through the Minnesota Family Investment Program, or MFIP. These two programs will address needs of people who generally are under the radar. What happened this session that allowed things to move forward for people who often don't have a voice in government?
Well, I think what happened is Peggy Flanagan was elected lieutenant governor. And I say that as someone who's a partner with me. Those who know the workings up here know that, the former director of the Children's Defense Fund, Minneapolis school board member, and an Indigenous woman herself, stepped into a position that no Indigenous woman ever in American history has had, an executive office. And I think that made a big difference, that she brought a coalition together. And again, this showed that I think Minnesotans, this big division, I don't go around demonizing my Republican friends and saying they don't care about people who are less fortunate. They do care. Paul Gazelka was a supporter of the task force, making sure that happened. So I think having the lieutenant governor there, having her ability to build a coalition, having the needs that were very real, and it was a powerful story. Peggy talks about being, the child of a single mother trying to make ends meet, and the money that she received on MFIB hasn't changed since she was a child until this year. And so I think she was instrumental in making it happen. And I think just that good Minnesota caring for our neighbors really showed up. This is something we should be proud of. That was a pretty heavy lift because ideologically, there's a lot of folks that would, say this was giveaways, this was the wrong way to go. It's not that. It's investing in Minnesota's future, and it's righting a tragic wrong that Indigenous women are invisible, and they cannot be. And certainly Lieutenant Governor's not invisible, and she wanted that for others.
The Senate Education Chair, bringing it back to education, a former teacher, and this is a huge part of your campaign platform and who you are as a person, right. I think. Senate Education Chair Carla Nelson spoke on the Senate floor about the historic investment in Minnesota schools. We'll have 2% and 2% on the formula for the coming biennium. When adjusted for inflation, however, educational leaders don't see this as a windfall, but rather just as necessary ongoing investment. Is 2% and 2%, should this be the norm?
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree with them. This is again, that down payment language I use is making sure we didn't slide further back. One of the big pieces of that, the 2 and 2 is important. And I remind, your listeners that we started out with the Republican budget having 0.5% and nothing else. And the other part is what's really important here. What's really pinching Minnesota schools is the federal government's inability to fund special education programs. It's a law, it's a mandate that we must provide, and it's the right thing to do, to provide these services. But the federal government, when they passed it and passed IDEA, promised that they would pay the 40%. They don't, so we make up the difference. So what's also in this budget is enough money, $90 million the first year, to make sure that schools can use their 2 and 2 on general education in the classroom, and I think that's critically important. So I'm certainly proud of what we were able to get. We started out getting, this was 4 times more than was originally proposed in the Senate. It will allow schools to at least have some certainty over the next 2 years, but I don't disagree with those critics who say there's a lot more we need to do. We do. We have opportunity gaps to close, and that's going to take resources.
At the beginning of the session, there was a lot of talk about transparency. There was you and Speaker Hortman and Leader Gazelka in a press conference to describe how things were going to be different, a grand vision for change. But in the end, it was still the three of you behind closed doors. So my question is, are results in the end more important than the process?
Well, this is the first time in over a dozen years that a bipartisan budget came in basically on time. As you said, there were no vetoes, and I think you hear the tone of this. There was a lot of respect going back and forth. Should it be more transparent? Absolutely. But I would argue against a backdrop of total dysfunction in D.C. Wisconsin has met 5 days so far because they're not even talking to one another. This should be the norm, but it's not. And I think we did something that was a pretty heavy lift in this environment, bringing folks together to try and come up to some of those compromises to get things done. Now, I will say this. Me personally, what I think the problem is, people can't compromise in public anymore. I went through this whole thing, and people are like, oh, you know, the governor lost because he gave up on this. I didn't win or lose. This is about governing for Minnesota. So I compromised on areas that I felt we could come back later. I didn't compromise areas like on healthcare and education where I have to get those things done. But I think, again, you know, people who are complaining that it was done, and some of the legislators are complaining, they gave 5 minutes to my budget. For the first time in Minnesota history, they weren't even going to hear the governor's budget. I had to go in and basically beg them to at least allow us to present for 5 minutes what our budget is. Is there any wonder why we had to get behind closed doors? I was presenting things that these senators never spent any time looking at. So as the executive side of this, and having been a member of the legislative side of things, we need to have conference committees out in the open and debate these things so they don't have to be done this way. But I also know I was elected to make sure the state works. I was elected to bring people together. I did have to lay down the hammer and say, this is going to get done and we're going to do it this way, and here is my compromise to you. What can you give back? So certainly the process can be better, but the results do matter. We have a budget that is basically bipartisan. We have a budget that invests in the things that make Minnesota, Minnesota. And we did it in relatively on time without a lot of, you know, there was not a lot of meanness in this. There wasn't a lot of harsh language. There was no name calling. There was no accusations. I think that stands for something. So once again, this is a down payment on a better functioning system, but it did work in the end to get, I think, the things that Minnesotans were looking for.
One last question, and you sort of have already addressed this, but as a newcomer to the executive branch, what have you learned so far?
Well, I think it was helpful for me to be a legislator because I always wondered on the other side. You know, I think every legislator kind of sees themselves of saying, what would happen if I were on the executive side of things? What I've learned is it does take compromise. It does take both sides, and especially I would say the executive branch, to set the tone of how things are done. We started very early on this, and I think people mentioned that, well, we kind of ended up with the same thing at the end, but the tone was different at the Capitol. Don't underestimate how important that tone is. That is relationships, that is friendship, that is respect. And don't get me wrong, I disagree strongly with where the Republican Senate was on many issues. But disagreeing and disrespecting are two very different things. And I think through this whole process, what I've learned is if the executive branch can set the tone, you can get some results out of that. And I intend to continue to do it.
Governor Walz, I want to thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.